Stop speaking.
I'm giving you a chance, sweetie.
Venom: The Last Dance wraps up the Venom trilogy with an emotional send-off for Eddie Brock and his alien sidekick, Venom.
We are Venom!
It's the end of Tom Hardy's journey as Eddie and the final chapter for Venom as, well, Venom.
He did not taste good.
Sony kept their word with a dramatic farewell, and a few fans in theaters yesterday even got misty-eyed. But honestly, that was just a small handful of us. Most viewers were too drained by repetitive scenes and CGI that felt more forced than impactful. The premiere of Venom: The Last Dance didn't land as Sony hoped. So what really went wrong here? And why are more fans feeling like Sony's taking a misstep with a character as loved as Venom? Before we get into it, heads up. There may be some minor spoilers. If you haven't watched Venom: The Last Dance yet and want to feel the same rush I did in the theater, maybe check it out first. Your experience might be totally different from mine. But hey, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button. We go deep into everything MCU and superhero here. If you're into that, let's keep the conversation rolling in the comments.
You may not make it out of this alive, buddy.
Venom: The Last Dance is directed by Kelly Marcel, who also co-wrote the story with Tom Hardy. This time, we see Eddie Brock and Venom on the run, not only from the government, but also from Xenophage, a brutal symbiote hunter sent by Null. Now, for those who aren't familiar, Null is the dark god who created the symbiotes, and it seems like Sony is setting him up as the ultimate villain for a larger universe. In this storyline, symbiotes have been making their way to Earth, hiding among meteors and other cosmic debris. Null, still imprisoned on his planet Clintar, has sent his forces after them, specifically hunting for something called the Codex. This Codex is key to his escape, and here's the twist. Venom hid the Codex on Earth, merging it with Eddie Brock. That's why Venom and Eddie are Null's most wanted targets. So, after some intense close calls and battles, Eddie and Venom's journey reaches a breaking point, leading to a climactic showdown. For some, this final act might feel emotionally charged. And honestly, the brief team-up between Venom and other symbiotes in the climax did add a spark of excitement. But here's the catch. As intense as the setup sounds, the movie feels like a longer version of its trailers. The story hits almost the same beats we've seen in promotional clips, with hardly any twists. It's almost as if the film's big moments were already spoiled, making it feel predictable by the time you watch it unfold. All right, let's get into Venom, a character who, let's be honest, has one of the wildest journeys in the Marvel universe. Venom didn't just start as Spider-Man's villain. Marvel took him, saw the potential for something bigger, and gave him a whole anti-hero arc that fans instantly connected with. And you can see why. Venom's dark, intense, morally complicated personality made him stand out from a lot of Marvel's other heroes and villains. And that symbiote world Marvel built around him, incredible. They didn't just stop with Venom, they introduced a whole lineup of other symbiotes like Carnage, Scream, Toxin, and more, each adding another layer to this universe. Carnage, in particular, became a fan favorite almost instantly, bringing that chaotic, terrifying presence to Venom's story. Marvel just gets how to make these symbiotes complex and engaging, turning Venom into a central character in these larger, darker, and more intense stories. Now here's where I think Sony started to drop the ball. They have this amazing deep backstory from the comics, and it's like they just skimmed the surface with Venom in the movies. In Venom: Let There Be Carnage, you'd expect Carnage, this hugely popular, iconic character, to make a massive impact, right? But he just didn't. I mean, they had Woody Harrelson, who's perfect for a role like Carnage, and yet, somehow, it felt empty. Carnage was hyped up to be terrifying, unpredictable, and intense, but they didn't give him the depth he has in the comics. The movie barely scratched the surface of his story and just went for the action scenes. Then, here we are again with Venom: The Last Dance. And it feels like Sony didn't learn from the last movie. They keep giving us these awesome symbiote characters without the emotional pull or backstory to really get us invested. There's this huge opportunity with Null, the god of the symbiotes, hunting down Eddie and Venom to get the codex he needs. But instead of fleshing out Null's story, his motivations, or even the unique connection Eddie and Venom have with him, it's like Sony just rushed to get to the climactic battle without bringing us along for the emotional ride. They had all the material from the comics to give us an epic storyline with Eddie and Venom facing their creator, but in the movie, it came off as shallow. Honestly, I think they missed the real power of the symbiote story here. Venom's appeal isn't just that he's got this creepy, awesome alien suit. It's the complicated relationship he has with Eddie Brock, the constant struggle between being a hero or giving into his darker side. And when you add other symbiotes like Carnage or Toxin into the mix, it's not just a random fight. It's a struggle with family, morality, identity. In The Last Dance, when Venom teams up with other symbiotes for that final battle, it's supposed to be epic, but it doesn't quite hit. Most of us couldn't name half of those symbiotes because Sony didn't give us a chance to connect with them or even understand who they are. They just show up in the battle and disappear, which is disappointing when we're supposed to care about this big climactic showdown. So it's like Sony has these goldmine stories to pull from, these incredible characters with rich backstories, and instead we just get action without the soul. Imagine if they took the time to develop each symbiote's character, their connection to Venom, and the threat that Null actually poses. We could have had a story where Venom's team-up felt powerful and emotional, where we were on the edge of our seats, understanding the stakes and rooting for each character. Instead, it's like they're just background noise to make the CGI battle look bigger. If I asked you to name each of the symbiotes that joined Venom at the end of The Last Dance, could you? Probably not, and that's where Sony fell short. Marvel has built a loyal fan base for Venom and these symbiotes by making them relatable, complicated, and layered. Sony's live action just doesn't go there, and it feels like a missed opportunity for what could have been an unforgettable ending to Venom's trilogy. So here's a question I've been pondering. Has Sony just given up on this live-action Venom series? It's such a shame to see these dynamic and unique characters from the comics getting such a half-hearted treatment in the movies. They didn't even take the time to properly introduce the characters they brought into this film. After watching Venom: The Last Dance, I couldn't help but wonder if this whole thing was just a spectacle for flashy action sequences and cool visuals. This is such a stark contrast to what I imagined when I first saw the trailers. They had me excited when they introduced Null, making me think Sony was actually expanding the Venomverse, which has its own comic title. But let's be real. The emotional depth we hope to see, especially after the disappointment of Let There Be Carnage, is even weaker this time around. It felt like we were just watching a parade of characters throwing punches to satisfy fan cravings for action scenes, only to end up with a story that feels pretty shallow. The Xenophage and the symbiote army were just there, doing their thing without leaving any real impact on us as viewers. Now, bringing Null into the mix could have been a genius move. It opens up possibilities for a new supervillain and potential crossovers. His presence kind of reminded me of when Thanos first showed up at the end of the Avengers back in 2012. It hinted at Sony's future plans for this franchise, which is exciting. But even with Null's limited screen time, it still felt a bit empty. And don't even get me started on the Xenophage. At first I thought, whoa, this guy's going to be a formidable foe. But then it turned into this chaotic action scene that just confused me. It felt like I was watching a game of hide-and-seek between Venom and the Xenophage, and I was left scratching my head. Come on, Sony, I expected so much more from you. On the bright side, I'll give credit where it's due. The CGI for the symbiotes is impressive, making them look all slimy and stretchy. But the cinematography? That's a different story. My eyes were exhausted trying to keep up with all the camera movements during the symbiote fights. It was like a whirlwind, and I could hardly focus on what was happening. I tried to roll with it, but honestly, it was tough. Especially since I didn't have a solid grasp of the symbiotes involved. In short, while there's some cool stuff happening visually, I'm left feeling like we missed out on the real potential of these characters. We deserve better storytelling that brings these incredible comic book figures to life, in a way that does justice to their legacies. Let's hope Sony can find a way to turn this around in the future. All right, let's talk about Mrs. Chen. Yay, she's back. I was actually a bit excited to see her character again, hoping it would deepen the emotional conflict between Eddie Brock and Venom. But honestly, Mrs. Chen ends up feeling a bit out of place in this film. When she meets Eddie in Las Vegas, her character seems quite different from what we've seen in the previous two movies. It feels like her presence is more of a formality, just checking a box because it's the end of the trilogy. Unfortunately, she mostly ends up being Venom's dance partner, which is a bit disappointing. Now, about the Martin family, I'm not really sure what the director was thinking by including them. They seem to just serve as a ride for Eddie to get to Vegas and meet Mrs. Chen. There's a lot of potential in their characters, and honestly, I found them intriguing. But sadly, there just isn't enough story space for them. Then there's Rex Strickland, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. His role feels pretty underdeveloped too. He's caught up in the symbiote chase and has a bit of revenge subplot due to some earlier events, but it just doesn't go anywhere significant. And don't even get me started on Dr. Payne, played by Juno Temple. Her character left me feeling confused. At first, we get these interesting flashbacks of her past, where we learn about her brother's fascination with space. It seemed promising, but then she barely contributes to the action against Xenophage. By the end, I was left wondering what the point of her backstory was. I have a feeling Sony might bring Dr. Payne back in future projects, but it's a bit frustrating that fans are left with so little to hold on to in Venom: The Last Dance. It feels like they might be trying too hard to keep up with the MCU style, borrowing elements without fully fleshing them out in their own narrative. Now, even though I've had my fair share of complaints, I have to admit the ending of this film is actually the strongest part of the whole trilogy. The soundtrack that plays during Eddie Brock and Venom's farewell really hits home, capturing Eddie's sadness beautifully. And it's not just one track, there are several songs, and honestly, they're all pretty awesome. If you're a fan of the Venom films, don't worry. I wouldn't say The Last Dance is the worst of the bunch. For me, that title still goes to Venom: Let There Be Carnage. So I'd put The Last Dance in the second spot, with the original Venom taking the crown as the best of the three. But hey, that's just my take. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop your opinions in the comments. Thank you all for sticking with me through this review. I really appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure to share these discussions with you. There are plenty more superhero adventures to dive into, whether it's MCU, DC, or Sony. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming chats. The comment section is all yours, so let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.